And did wash a hell of a lot of speed off. Nob Taniguchi on screen now, the immaculate Sutton Brothers S15. And you know what, it was only a couple of years ago when Nob Taniguchi first turned up at World Time Attack, he remarked to the Sutton Brothers how amazing, being a fellow S15 owner himself, remarked on how beautifully engineered and presented the car was. I'm even sure back then he probably hinted that he wouldn't have minded having a drive of it, and look what's happened. That dream's eventuated. Of course, Nob Taniguchi, just like Kiichi Tsuchiya and Tarzan Yamada and under Suzuki, becoming household names here in Australia, pretty much in the scene. And again, years ago, if you were to follow the earlier Best Motoring video series, these guys were very big. They've actually brought JDM Performance to the screens of many fans of the sport right around the world by virtue of something called a video cassette.
Well, early times already. They've been quick to kick off the morning session, Carl.
Okay, we're down here at the Yokohama stand, and from a driver's point of view, the tyre is probably the single most important thing on the tyre. You've got the aero, you've got the suspension, you've got the engine all working, but the final piece of contact patch is the tyre. So I'm down here with Bill from Yokohama to ask a couple of questions. Now, firstly, how long has Yokohama been involved with the World Time Attack Challenge?
We were involved when just before Oran Park ended, actually, so I don't know how many years that's been.
So it's probably about 6 or 7 years, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And from there, it actually started, the first few were in August, so they were much cooler events. Now we've ended up here, but yeah, going well.
Yeah, going well. So the tyre itself, we've got a number of different compounds, a number of different categories. Can you tell us a little bit about the different compounds that are available this weekend for the guys?
There's 3. The Club Sprint cars use the 808R, which is an ultra high performance road tyre. So they're able to go around, do as many laps as they like. With the outright cars, you've got medium and soft compound. With the soft compound, you try and do 1 hot lap. If you try and do more than that, they usually overheat. With the cars, how they are now, there's such high horsepower, such high downforce. You don't want to work that tyre any harder than you need to.
And just finally, just to get an appreciation for how many tyres we're actually dealing with on a race weekend like this. I've actually done the numbers, and between all the different categories, the 4 different categories, you're talking about if everyone used their quota of tyres and everyone's got a limited amount of tyres they're allowed to use, you're talking up around 900 individual tyres. A lot of that's done prior to the race weekend, but how many tyres are you fitting over the course of a weekend like this?
It's probably a 1,100 tyre event when you look at what was happening before the event. But at the event, we'll probably do half of those. So, you know, that's a fair bit to do in basically 2 days. So 250 tyres a day. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll leave it at that. Thanks very much. A bit of insight into the tyres that goes into the World Time Attack Challenge.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for that. Yokohama, of course, one of the main reasons why we can continue to go every year. We are all on Yokohama Advance, the 8050s. Now, Nob Taniguchi out there, just getting the Sutton Brothers S15 through, went through a minute 33.162 on his flyer, but as you can see there, Chad, a couple of bites at the corner there. Whether or not that's just Nob trying a few little stabs and seeing whether or not it will respond on the first hit. A couple of times you see that the front end still maybe needs a little bit more dialing in.
Interesting though, going for back-to-back hot laps, and the first sector times look pretty good, but it just loses a bit around the top of the hill, and that's to be expected. This car hasn't quite got the same aero as the others, as the back end steps out just under throttle. 106.8 to the second sector, so he's a good, yeah, well there it says 5.6 seconds off the fastest second sector time set by Barton Moore through the mid part of the track. So should be quick in a straight line, less drag on this than some of the other big pro cars that we've got, but definitely not going to be as quick around Corporate Hill. Let's see how it compares to that last time. 133.1 was his last lap. Nob Taniguchi, great to have him back running in pro. and backs it up with a 132.9. So they're going to build on some consistency here.
Yeah, and you're spot on there, Chad. Yeah, not as aggressive in the aero as you can see with a lot of the other pro categories. In fact, this has been a very, very well presented and immaculate open class car for many, many years. But you know what, the best...
Chris, that is phenomenal. The Porsche is back in the pits, the MCA Hammerhead back in the pits as well. Sydney Motorsport Park, if you're up there in the grandstand, put your hands together for Barton Law, a local Sydney team. 1:24.0, just 0.23 of a second off the Tilton Evo time from last year.
Now, considering with the previous interview today, he goes, I think there's a little bit more in the car, there's a little bit more in me. Well, I think that was a little bit more in Barton just then, what we saw. 24.0, that's a fairly decent chunk to take out of it. And considering I think there's, again, a little bit more for the car to be dialed in. Nob Taniguchi went out and went minute 30.191, still trying to crack that elusive minute 29 for the Sutton boys. And again, it's probably the best set of hands that the boys could have given it to, Nob Taniguchi.
But still no under Suzuki.
No, this is it. This is one of these scripts that never gets written.
With this new billet engine, game on. Game on, I say.
That is crazy considering that I don't think if you were to ask him, did he get every corner right, the answer would be no.
Taniguchi with the moment there, sorry.
He had two shots at turn 3 there where the car, he pointed once, he pointed again. And if anything, that's an indication the car is actually pointing where he wants it to point, which means he can go later into the apex of 3. And the man himself will know truly how much left in that car. Here's an action replay. Now this is of course Nob Taniguchi. Nice little slide. I think what's that, out of 6 nearly.
Yep.
And as we can see, there's the Fox. We call him the Fox now.
Yeah.
Tim Slade, the Fox, systems check, inverted commas. That was 3/4 of a killer lap right there. And even just a roll right
It
off
was
the
more
throttle.
than that. That was 9/10 of a killer lap.
And of course, I'm sure Murray's got some of this amazing technology where, you know, you can speculate just how fast the lap's going to be yourself without needing any timers to tell you. And maybe they're on the radio going, roll off it, roll off it, roll off it. This is quick.
We saw the sector time for Tim Slade come through. It was a mid-101 to that second sector. It was almost identical to the one of under Suzuki. Suzuki turned that into a mid-24. I have no doubt that Tim Slade's car is capable of 24s as well. Here comes the Japanese. Now, what happened to under Suzuki? He laid down a fast first sector and has lifted potentially in the second. Taniguchi 105.2. He's on a potential 1:29 lap. But under Suzuki, he was 4/10 up on his own personal best time for the first sector, so he got through there without a mistake. He's coming back in. Now, he's not going to finish the lap off, but the early sector times show us that he was on a 23.
Oh, here we go. Taniguchi, minute 30.036. What does he have to do to get a 20-something out of this car? He is pushing so hard to get a 29 for the Sutton brothers. Now, this is interesting. Now, look, in his